Hi there, it's me, Teacher Mike from Phuket Pals. Welcome to video 3 of this GED Social Studies course. In this one, we're going to dive head first into the content, okay, the civics and government content. Now, civics and government is around 50% of the entire content of the social studies exam. So you need to be very aware of the key concepts, vocabulary connected to this, the ideas connected to it, and anything else that might trip you up as well. Okay, so let's have a look then. We're going to be thinking about types of historical and modern governments. Question 1 is, what is a government? Well, governments are institutions that make, interpret, and implement laws for the people in a community. These processes maintain order in society and provide security for citizens. Okay, so what do governments do? They make laws, okay, laws that influence your life on a daily basis. They interpret ideas for laws, so they will talk to each other, and the members of government will talk to each other, and they'll try and figure out what other laws would make the society function in a more efficient and better way. They also implement laws, so they put laws put them into action for the people in a community. Okay, so these processes maintain order in society. Okay, so it maintains a kind of it stops society from descending into chaos. That's the theory anyway, and gives security for the citizens as well. So in theory, if you live under a government, you will have laws provided for you that will make your life it'll make it you'll make your life better, okay? You'll be more secure, and you'll have more law and order, there'll be more balance within the society itself to help you pursue whatever you want to do. That's the theory anyway, okay? Now, there have been many different kinds of government throughout history. Many different kinds exist today in the US. The citizens play an important role in the government. Okay, through elections, Americans choose their leaders. Okay, so in the US, they have elections every 4 years in which a new president can be elected. Okay, so in the US, a president can only serve 2 terms, 2 4-year terms. After that, they have to stand down from office. And every 4 years, the public get the chance to elect or re-elect a new president. Okay. The United States citizens benefit from a government that was created to protect their rights and freedoms. Okay, and we'll look at that more in later lessons when we look at the Constitution of the United States itself, in which large parts of it were set up to protect people's rights and freedom. Okay, now that doesn't happen everywhere in the world, as we will see later. But in the US, definitely the Founding Fathers, they had a clear vision for the US. They wanted people to be free, they wanted people to have rights, and they just wanted to create a place where people could thrive, and no one group of people would dominate any other group of people, and people would just be free to do what they want and pursue their dreams. Now, again, that's the theory once again. So if we think, we'll do another lesson on the Founding Fathers, don't worry, but basically the Founding Fathers kind of look back into history from their pedestal, shall we say. They look back into history and kind of cherry-picked from past governments they saw. They cherry-picked from ancient Greece and Rome and various other parts of history, and then used those best bits to kind of create the US system of government that we know today. Okay, we can kind of classify governments throughout history into 4 different areas. There are more than this, but these are the ones that come up in the GED test most often. First is an oligarchy, or an oligarchical form of government. This is a political system in which power is held by a small group of people. Okay, these people are usually members of an upper class, such as nobles or military officers. They are not elected by the citizens. In an oligarchy, the rulers typically exercise power in their particular interests rather than on behalf of the society at large. Okay, so think of oligarchy, you're thinking of a tiny group of people, or they could be people who have inherited their position. It could be that their family has a long line of ruling a country. It could be that they are a military government in which you have a small number of people making all the decisions, and usually what happens is the greater interest of society gets kind of forgotten about quite quickly, and the interest of this small group and their friends takes precedent. So that's an oligarchy. Obviously, you could argue a very unfair and elitist form of government. Next is monarchy. Power is held by a king, a queen, or an emperor or an empress. This leader generally rules until the end of his or her life. Then leadership is passed on to their heirs. Okay, that's their son or daughter who will take the reins of government next from them. In a traditional monarchy, the leader has absolute power. Okay, so that's in what's known as an absolute monarchy. Okay, so we have to differentiate here between absolute monarchy and what's known as constitutional monarchy. An absolute monarchy is a system of government in which the king or queen makes all political decisions, everything comes through them, and they have to give a big rubber stamp, boom, for anything to become law in that country. A constitutional monarchy is different. A constitutional monarchy means the powers of the monarchy are checked by a constitution. What is a constitution? A constitution is like a rule book, shall we say, a list of cans and cannots for a government within a country. So if a king, for example, is the leader of the country and it's a constitutional monarchy, well, there'll be things they have power to do and things that they don't have power to do. So a constitutional monarchy is a check on the power of monarchy. Okay, it checks it. It prevents the king or queen from wielding total control over the population. An absolute monarchy, it has total control. They can do whatever they want. Okay. Constitutional monarchy examples, such as UK or the Netherlands. And as we said, their powers are limited by laws that may be written or unwritten. Like the UK's constitution is unwritten. It's what's known as an uncodified constitution, so it's not written down. But everyone knows what the rules of the game are from the beginning. Okay. And also in a constitutional monarchy, the king or queen usually doesn't have that. They don't usually use their political power that much. They're more of a figurehead for the system. Okay, they'll appear on official days for photo shoots, and they officially represent the country, but they don't wield that much political power. Because you can imagine in somewhere like the UK, if the Queen started making all the decisions, well, people are not going to be very happy about that, and they might want change. So that's why. Okay, next is a dictatorship. It's a type of government in which a single leader exercises absolute power over nearly every aspect of life in a country. Okay, including political power, social power, economic issues. The leader or dictator is not bound by any rules and can enact or change laws at will. Elections, if they're permitted, are usually meaningless because no transfer of power is allowed. Okay, so you're looking at, with a dictatorship here, you're looking at, think about North Korea, Kim Jong-un, think about Stalin in Russia, think about Mao Zedong in China. These are examples from history, contemporary with North Korea, but from history with the Russian and the Chinese example of leaders that wielded total power. They had total power over politics, over people's thinking, over society itself, over business, the economy. And if you try to challenge their power, well, good luck. Okay, let's see what happens to you in these systems if you try to challenge. These are not a dictatorship is not a system open for a dialogue. It's not open for constructive criticism. The dictator himself will say he's right and you have to follow him. If you don't, you've got a problem. Okay. Usually in a dictatorship as well, they have something what's called a cult of personality. A cult of personality, meaning they kind of create this image of themselves as being almost godlike. And you can see that if you look at any of the public rallies in like with Stalin, for example, or even in North Korea today. There's so many images of this person. The way they're presented in the media as if they can't make any mistakes, as if they make decisions that other people would be unable to make. And it's almost as if they're elevated to this higher position, higher than a normal human almost. Also dictatorship, if you want to read about what a dictatorship looks like, read George Orwell's 1984, which is the most probably accurate and graphic account, a fictional account of dictatorship in action. Highly recommend that book if you haven't read it already. Then we have democratic systems of government. Okay, so this is very relevant considering we talk a lot about the US system of government, which is a democratic system. Now, there are different types of democratic systems of government, so let's dig into that. But first of all, in a democratic system, the citizens exercise power on their own behalf. Okay, so the earliest democratic systems were the small Greek city-states of Athens. These were known as, what do you call them again? Polis. So in ancient Greece, they had the polis, P-O-L-I-S. These were city-states which had their own walled communities. They were little mini countries almost, but they had their own system. They used the first ever kind of known democratic systems that the world has seen. Okay, now if you can imagine the kind of crudest example I could give it of this. Imagine a big town. Imagine a town square. Imagine someone getting into the middle and saying, we're here today to vote on the issue of shall we build the bridge to this place. And all the citizens are surrounding this person. But in the case of ancient Greece, it wouldn't have been all the citizens. It would have been male landowners, predominantly. There'd be no women or anything like that. But there were people of position. People of position would have had the right to cast a vote, which by today's standards you think, oh, that's only a very small number of people, but it was still a step forward in ancient times towards giving people more of a voice in society. So yeah, in ancient Greece, the male landowners would vote and things would become law if enough of them wanted that to happen. Okay, this is known as direct democracy, where the people have a direct influence over the policy that is the law that is created. Okay, so the best way to think of direct democracy in ancient times is think of that Greek city-state and the town square and the people getting to vote directly on issues. Direct democracy also exists in modern society in the form of referendum is probably the best example of that. If you don't know what a referendum is when the government of a country give the people, the citizens of a country, the opportunity to vote on a single issue. And if the people vote yes or no, they give the option of yes or no, and it will become law depending on what the people say. Okay. Switzerland has lots of referendums, actually, more than most countries in the world. And it gives the people a real direct influence over political decision making in the country. Okay, so when you think direct democracy, ancient times, you think ancient Greece. Modern times, you think of referendums in Switzerland in particular, or you can think of like the New England town hall meetings as well, in which people have a direct influence over policy and the decision making and law, eventually the law. Also, there is representative democracies. Okay, this is when citizens elect representatives to carry out the functions of a government. Okay, so think of in the UK, for example, where you vote for someone who's a member of a political party. If they get enough votes, they will go to Parliament and represent your view. So they go to represent you and everyone else who voted for them. Same in the US. This is different to direct democracy because the citizen doesn't have the power to directly influence law and policy, but they do that indirectly through a representative who goes to Parliament or the government for them. Excuse me, as I fly. Okay, this is also known as indirect democracy for that reason. Okay, and when the head of state is a person elected by voters, this form of government is called a republic. Okay, so when the highest position of power in the land, political power, is the person who's voted, it's called, you live in a republic. Okay. Next one, democracy can be either parliamentary or presidential. A parliamentary democracy, such as those in Australia, Great Britain and Canada, is a type of government in which government leaders are chosen by the political party that holds a majority of seats in the legislature. Legislature is the law-making body of government, a place where laws are made, thought about and made. Or parliament based on elections. Okay, if no party holds a majority, several parties may work together to form a coalition government. Okay, so if you take the UK as an example here, it's one of the most famous parliamentary democracies in the world. You have a number of political parties which compete for people's votes every 5 years in a general election. Remember, 4 years for elections, for presidential elections in the US. In the UK, for prime minister, or for government elections, general elections as they're known, it's every 5 years. So yeah, the aim of the system in the UK is for one party to get a majority of votes, and then they take government and form a strong government. But that often doesn't happen, and you have to form a strong government in the UK, they need over 50% of the vote, and that often doesn't happen. So you might have like 3 or 4 political parties with 10% each, 20%, and then not one party has over 50%. Now this leads to what's called a coalition government, where these different political parties have to sit together in government and try and reach a collective decision. Now you can imagine that leads to many problems, because these political parties have different ideas about how things should work and how society, where society should be going. So trying to get them to agree on what should be law or what should happen is very difficult. So coalition governments are often quite weak, and they often fall apart very easily. Whereas a majority government in a parliamentary democracy, that's one with over 50% of the vote, these are usually stronger, and they get the job done more effectively, okay, in basic terms. Okay. Next, we have a presidential democracy, such as in the US and France, and this functions a little bit differently. In this kind of democracy, is headed by a powerful chief executive called the president, who's elected by the voters, generally for a set number of years. The president is separate from the legislature and exercises a considerable amount of independent power, but his actions are limited by the Constitution and the other laws. Okay, like in the US, you have a presidential democracy. Now that president isn't all powerful. He does have a lot of power, but his power is checked by the system of checks and balances. His power can be checked by Congress, etc., by the judiciary as well, in many different areas. So this is it's different to the UK because, as I say, he's a chief executive elected by the voters, and his power is checked by by different parts within the government itself. Okay, whereas in the UK you have that parliamentary system, which is very different indeed. Okay, that's about it. Okay, so I think that's about it. It won't go any further. We'll check out a quick question here. Exercise 1. Types of historical and modern governments. Choose the best answer. This is kind of a GED style question. In which of the following governments does a leader have the most control over a citizen's lives? Okay, in which of the following governments does a leader have the most control over citizens' lives? Well, it's probably going to be a dictatorship here. Okay, probably going to be a dictatorship, because in a dictatorship there's no check on the leader's power. He's all powerful. In an oligarchy, well, there's a small group of people, so one person won't be quite as powerful there. In a monarchy, well, the monarchy could be a constitutional monarchy in which the monarchy's powers are checked by the constitution of that country. Although if it was a absolute monarchy, it would be probably just as powerful, if not more, than a dictatorship. But it doesn't say absolute monarchy here, so we can't pick that. And a democracy, I say democracy is, well, democracy comes from the ancient Greek. Okay, so it means power of the people, doesn't it? It means giving the people power to exercise control over their own lives. So people in democracies are, in theory, again, less controlled by those above them in the political system. Okay, so I would pick C for that one. Okay. Next. Okay, read each characteristic of a democracy in the space and indicate whether each characteristic is found in a direct or a representative democracy. Use D for direct, R for representative. So every citizen can place proposals on the ballot. And if a proposal becomes law, if the majority vote for it. Well, this has to be direct democracy because every citizen gets the chance to put a proposal on a ballot. Everyone gets to vote on a particular issue. So that has to be direct democracy, doesn't it? And it becomes law if the majority vote for it. If it was a representative democracy, you vote for a representative who will then fight your corner, so to speak, in the government itself, in Parliament or in Congress, wherever. So yeah, the first one is direct. Next one, citizens elect a legislature to rule the country. Well, that's a representative democracy, isn't it? Okay, so citizens elect a legislature, that's a law-making body. Okay, so that's Congress in the US to rule the country and make laws, etc. Next one, delegates represent the wishes of the voting citizens. Well, that is representative, okay, because you vote for your delegate or your representative, and then they're supposed to look after your wishes for their time, okay, their time in power. Power to veto laws rests with the citizens themselves. Well, that will be a direct form of government, won't it? Because the citizens have the power to veto a law. What's veto mean? It means get rid of, stop. Okay. In a representative democracy, individual citizens don't have the power to stop a law. In a representative democracy, citizens, if they want to stop a law, they have to do things like, put pressure on their elected representatives. They have to put pressure on the government themselves. They have to start interest groups, pressure groups, demonstrations, protests, blogs, YouTube channels, things like this. Okay, I think that's enough for today. So I hope you enjoyed video 3. I hope that has enlightened you a little bit about the different types of historical government. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.